All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. First, I just want to say thank you for joining us today, and we hope you enjoy it and hopefully learn something. If not, you get lunch out of it, and hopefully you also get to try something maybe you haven't tried before. But my name is Bella. I'm a health educator at the Williamson County Health Department. This is my partner, Caroline. She is also a health educator. And we have with us Stephanie Yeadon. She's our WIC dietitian, and Jeannie Jowers is part of our medical staff. So throughout the presentation, we're going to let them throw in some input and things like that. If you have questions, feel free to ask. I know a lot of you are from school, but you don't have to raise your hand. You can just shout it out at us. Since you're not children who are going to shout 20 things at us at one time, that will be fine with us. Or if you have questions you want to ask any of us, whether it's Stephanie, myself, Caroline, or Jeannie, personally at the end, if you don't want to put it out there in front of everybody, we will be hanging back for a little bit to answer those questions. So as you guys know, we're here to talk about diabetes management, and I'm going to turn it over to Caroline to get us started.
Perfect. Okay, so there are some things that Bella kind of already covered, so I'm going to skip right on through. More things like with introductions, speakers, things like this. You see us, you know us. Here are some more things about us. So these are going to be some core concepts that we'll talk about a little bit through this presentation. We're going to go over the definition, more definitions, more about diabetes, what insulin is, type 1, type 2. We're going to go over the symptoms and then testing and management. We'll go over certain symptoms that are more specific to things like low blood sugar, high blood sugar, and then some diabetic emergencies to take note of too as well, and potentially what to do during these emergencies. And then at the end, cooking demonstration with all the food, the good stuff that's all over here that most of us are probably here for. So, before starting with diabetes, a really big thing that we want to cover first is that the diabetes symptoms and management are all going to be different for each individual person. So it could be depending on lifestyle, so diet and exercise, maybe even age, or even how long someone has been diabetic for, or even other chronic health conditions that may heighten some symptoms of diabetes too as well. So, diabetes, a really big overview is this, is a chronic health condition where the body either does not produce enough insulin or does not know how to use insulin. We will discuss insulin in the next couple slides. So when we eat, our body's going to break down all the food into glucose or sugar. This sugar or glucose is going to be the body's main source of energy. So you can see what happens or the potential complications that can occur when our body does not break down the food or is not able to use the glucose or the sugar. So with insulin, we like to describe this as more of like a lock and key. So insulin is going to try to unlock the cell for the glucose, the sugar, to enter the cell for the body to use. So for type 1, type 2, we can see here for type 1, there are no keys, right? So the body is not producing any insulin. So for type 2, we can see that there are some keys here, but the body does not make enough or it doesn't know how to use the insulin. So the key does not fit into the lock. So these are going to be the two definitions of the two different types. So some symptoms may or may not occur depending on what type you have, even things like being pre-diabetic, things like this, how long if you have it, kind of where your blood sugar levels are too as well. If they do, it may also differ. This is going to be in this slide, just a big overview of it. In the next few slides, we're going to discuss more things with low blood sugar, high blood sugar, and things like that. So urinating often, tingling hands and the feet, so more things like pins and needles, okay? Feeling very thirsty, feeling very dry, like your throat's really dry, you can't get enough water, you always want to drink some water, feeling very, very hungry, even if you're eating already, extreme fatigue, blurry vision, cuts and bruises or wounds that are really slow to heal, and even weight loss. So this can even be if you're eating enough, any of this stuff, and you're still losing weight, these can be symptoms of diabetes. So for testing, I'm going to hand this over to Bella.
So I'm sure a lot of us have seen different blood glucose monitors. Some of us might even have them. We have the finger prick ones, the traditional ones. There's also the ones that insert on your skin that you'll change out every so often. So we want to check our blood sugar levels usually multiple times a day, not just when we wake up or not just at bed, to get a good general sense of what our blood sugar is. We do want to check it daily. Some people do not check it at all. Some people say, I just check it when I wake up. But checking it throughout the day will give you a good reading. The other thing that we probably hear a lot about now is our A1C level. So with diabetes, we used to primarily hear about your sugar, your blood glucose. But now A1C is another measure that we use, and it reflects your average blood glucose level for the past 2 to 3 months. And you want to strive for an A1C of 7 or less. I'm going to let Jeannie come up here and explain to you from a medical standpoint why the A1C level is important and what your provider is looking for when they are asking you or telling you about your A1C levels.
So your A1C level is going to be a picture of the average of those 1 to 2 months. And it's better than just a one-time reading, because occasionally it may be in range when you go to the doctor, or it may be out of range. But if we can get an overall picture of what's happening for that 1 to 2 months, that shows how well your glucose is staying controlled. A controlled glucose is better. We don't want spikes and lows all over the place, because that's when damage starts to occur. So that's why it's so important to get that good overall picture, not only for someone that has diabetes, but also for a possible screening as you get older to see if you could be pre-diabetic.
Jeannie, before you step away,
Yes.
may I ask, what is an ideal time or schedule for checking your blood glucose? What would you recommend?
Do you mean as far as like a first-time screening?
Yeah, let's say you're newly diagnosed with diabetes, or maybe you're in the pre-diabetic stage and your provider says, I'm going to give you 3 months before we come back together to see if we have got this under control or we need to look into medications or other things. What would you say? Because I know some people will just do it in the morning. Some people opt not to do it at all and wing it.
So a morning is it's good to do them in the morning. If we were doing an A1C, we would want to schedule them when they have not had anything to eat. That gives us an idea of what's going on right then. But if you're checking your glucose throughout the day, especially if you're on insulin, or it depends, when you eat food, your glucose levels will either spike or drop depending on what you eat. And so you want to maintain a control. If you do check your insulin or your glucose after you eat, not immediately after, but let's say 1 to 2 hours after, that's going to give you a good picture of what your body is doing and how well it is metabolizing the sugars. You're welcome.
Okay, so treatment, we have different forms of treatment. The most effective is going to be lifestyle and diet changes, which can often be hard when people think about making changes or finding time to exercise, or we don't want to give up the comfort foods or the things that we like, but small incremental changes. We don't want to go 0 to 60 and think that I've got to wake up at 4 a.m., go to the gym, run, do this. Fitting in about 20 minutes of exercise, whether that's walking or light resistance with weights, is also very helpful for weight management, is really all you need to start with. And then making small diet changes, such as cutting out sugary sodas or things like that, and finding a suitable alternative. Managing your diabetes should not be a form of torture in any way, because that is just not fun and not a way to make sustainable changes. But also, your doctor might recommend some medications to you. The most common oral medication is going to be metformin. I'm sure some of us have heard of that before, but there are other things out there, as well as things like Ozempic and things that we have been hearing of for other reasons, but those are diabetes medications that are intended to regulate your A1C levels. And then insulin injections. If you are insulin dependent, some people will have an insulin pump. We typically see that in somebody's abdominal area, and that's something that you work with your doctor. Jeannie, do you have anything to add about medications?
No.
Okay. So, what causes low blood sugar? Usually low blood sugar is about lower than 70 that we check on our monitor. Missing a meal can cause that, and that can cause us to feel dizzy, faint, sometimes hot, clammy, a little irritable. Medications can also lower your blood sugar. So if you are diabetic or newly diagnosed, you definitely want to be upfront with your provider, whether it's a nurse, PA, doctor, whoever, about everything you're taking, because we don't want to add something to your regimen that's going to negatively impact you and lead to worse outcomes. Alcohol consumption as well. Alcohol is sugar. So if we are struggling with diabetes or living with diabetes, we want to make sure to limit our alcohol intake. For some people, that could mean cutting it out completely. Others will just have to lessen the amount they are intaking, and then being more physically active. So again, like I said, that doesn't mean we're all going to become Olympians or things like that. It just means getting up and moving your body more than what you are used to. Small changes can often yield big results, or having too much insulin in our body can also cause us to have low blood sugar. Do you guys have any questions about that? Do you have anything you'd like to add? No? Okay. All right. So we're going to go on. So like I said, some symptoms can include feeling weak, where maybe getting up is kind of taxing, walking to the door, doing small things, dizziness, which is often a very uncomfortable feeling, or having an intense hunger, being sweaty, feeling clammy, a racing heartbeat or pounding heartbeat, feeling trembly or shaky, something that's out of the norm for you, or oftentimes when you have low blood sugar, your brain starts getting a little anxious and you're feeling kind of nervous because you're not really understanding what's happening, and your brain is now working in tandem with your body to let you know something's not right with us, we have to take some action here. So now we're going to talk about high blood sugar, and that's anything higher than 180. So consuming carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are not just starchy things like potatoes, bread, rice, things like that. That also includes fruit. Oftentimes we think of fruit as being a very healthy golden standard thing, but it is chock full of sugars. So while it's a better alternative than eating a pint of ice cream, we still want to be mindful, or those fruit pouches that are intended for kids. I know I like them. They're easy on the go. They do have a lot of carbohydrates and sugar, so we want to make sure we keep that at bay so we don't have a blood sugar spike, not enough insulin, or if you're insulin dependent, missing a dose. We want to make sure we don't miss our insulin doses because it can have negative outcomes as well. And then not being consistent with our exercise. That's the hardest thing to do, is kind of rewire your brain and make a routine. And if you do great for 1 to 2 weeks and then you fall off and can't get back into it, we haven't really helped ourselves. And that's why we want to create small, manageable goals and reward ourselves in a positive way when we do make those achievements. And then any sort of illness, stress, or surgery can also cause a blood sugar spike. Oftentimes, if somebody is dealing with an illness or a stressful event or a surgery, there's a huge disruption in their daily life and daily activities, and oftentimes their food intake might be higher, or they're not being as physically active as they're used to, so that can also cause blood sugar spikes. And then hormone fluctuations. I know it's not a fun part of aging, hormones changing, all kinds of different things are happening. That can also lead to high blood sugar. And smoking as well. Hopefully nobody in this room is smoking, or if you are, we can talk about that later. We've got lots of different smoking cessation tools, whether that's smoking, vaping, chewing tobacco, Zen pouches, things like that. If you are living with diabetes, we want to cut that nicotine and smoking out of our life so we can lead a more healthy life as well. And then dehydration, especially now in this hot weather. We really want to make sure we're getting our water in and our hydration, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be straight water. It can be things like coconut water, a little bit of juice, sparkling water, but we want to stay hydrated, especially if we have diabetes. So anything extra there? No? Good? Okay. Is everyone good so far? We're almost to the food part, so the good stuff is coming. So some symptoms of high blood sugar. It's similar to low blood sugar, so sometimes that gets a little confusing for people, but these are signs we want to look out for. So increased thirst or hunger, frequent urination, having headaches, becoming more irritable, blurred vision, so we want to look out for that as well. Recurrent infections like urinary tract infections or skin infections that might be slow to heal, and wounds as well that are slow to heal. Dry mouth, feeling tired, and again, unexplained weight loss. Maybe you haven't had any lifestyle changes whatsoever, but you're losing weight and you just don't know why. It could be that you have high blood sugar. So we will continue. We can also have diabetic emergencies. So both high and low blood sugar can be considered diabetic emergencies. For severe low blood sugar, we want to act fast and have some sort of carbohydrate intake in our body, and then wait about 15 minutes before we test our blood sugar levels. If your levels are still below 70, have another round of the carbohydrate that you have chosen to eat. Wait and test again, because we want to make sure we get our levels back up. If they are still above 70, then or below 70, it should be, eat a meal, because we're needing to sustain our body more. And if the symptoms persist, you need to seek medical help, whether you deem that's calling your primary care provider or the emergency room, however you think is best to handle that situation for you. We want to seek care because we do not want to pass out, risk head injuries, or being left unattended for some amount of time. And if somebody is unconscious, we don't want to feed them or give them any sort of drink. We just want to call for medical help. You could put them in the recovery position on their side if you feel that that's something you want to do, but we don't need to take any further action than seeking some sort of medical help for them. So fast-acting carbohydrates can include things like candy, sugar candy, honey, glucose tablets. If somebody is diabetic, they often have a little kit with them that will have some of these things in there, fruit juice or regular soda, not diet soda, but the good sugary soda to hopefully help get those levels back up. So then when we have severe high blood sugar, we want to look for changes in their consciousness. They often become confused, don't really know where they are, what's going on, and they will have a fruity smell on their breath. That's ketone bodies coming out. So that's another indication that they've got high blood sugar. This can be life-threatening, so we want to get medical care for them right away. And then call 911 if you're not near a doctor. If you work in this building, you can walk across the parking lot quickly and come and get Nurse Jeannie, and she can help you.
We're probably going to tell you to call 911 as well.
So that concludes our portion. Rhonda Kleeman of Cigna is going to come up and talk to you guys about some things that you get through Cigna and Omada, and then we will get to the food.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming today. I really do appreciate your attendance. So there's some flyers over on the table on the back of the wall there that is about Omada. Omada is a program that, if you're on the Cigna medical plan, is available to you at no cost as long as you qualify for it. There's a website here where you go in and answer a few questions. If you are eligible for the program, they will ship you a digital scale. Basically, they connect to your scale, and then you work with a coach that will be able to help you with your diet, with your goals that maybe you have set. And if you are pre-diabetic, which you would need to probably be at least pre-diabetic to qualify for the program, then they're going to work to lower those numbers to get you in a better place. So I just wanted you guys to know about that. If you're interested, be sure and grab a flyer on your way out. And we're going to go ahead and get started, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Right before we get started, Stephanie's going to come up here and she's going to talk to you about the ingredients of our summer quinoa salad that we are going to put together. She's just going to go over what are the benefits of the ingredients and why we chose them as a diabetic-friendly meal. And then it's time to eat.
I'll be quick. I know we're probably hungry. So I'm Stephanie. I'm actually the WIC dietitian over there at the health department. So I do all the education for women, pregnant moms, postpartum moms, for children, their babies. But I've worked in hospitals and done like inpatient, all kinds of education for all disease processes. And so with diabetes, we just wanted to put together something simple. Y'all have bowls on your desk, but a great way to make this, and I think it really does kind of talk about it in the recipe, it says a jar. You can do like mason jars. So you could actually make this recipe. You could half it if you didn't want to make that many, but if you wanted to make these in mason jars, you can layer it, keep the dressing separate, and just keep the jars like refrigerated and, you know, grab and go, and they'll keep for a few days. So you can kind of meal prep like your lunches. It's totally customizable. If you wanted to add a little more extra protein, you could add some like diced grilled chicken to it. But we chose a dressing that's really easy to make, and you just throw everything in the blender and blend. And dressings are so easy to make, and then you control the salt that's in them. So that's what I like about when you make your own dressing. Excuse me. So if you didn't want to use as much salt, maybe you're on a much lower sodium diet, you could adjust that. You know, the dill is just really flavorful, but doesn't add any salt, just the herbs. The parsley is optional, but again, just more flavor. You could even zest like a little bit of the lemon if you wanted it even a more intense lemon flavor. Again, no salt. This is not going to affect your blood sugars either, so you're controlling it. The quinoa, I don't know if anyone's ever had that before. It's actually a seed, but if you were carb counting on a diabetic diet, the nutrition profile is more like a grain. so it would count as a carbohydrate, but it's higher in protein. It's got a good source of fiber, good source of magnesium, additional minerals, great source of iron, but it's lower glycemic index. So if you don't know what that means, it just means it's not like your white rice, white potatoes, white pasta. It's got that whole grain, so it's not going to have that big of a blood sugar spike. So a more sustained, but it's actually a seed. So anyway, but it's delicious. You can use it also in place of rice in other recipes, like if you make a stir fry or you just want a little side dish, like something. So just use it in place of rice or something like that, or couscous. Great. The tomatoes and cucumbers are just great summer veggies, but low carb. So I'm always about more veggies. And then the sun-dried tomatoes just add a ton of flavor. We did include some lettuce if you just want some more crunch. And I love feta cheese because it's so flavorful, you don't have to use as much. So, if you ever had made a salad and you're like, do you want some salad with your cheese and dressing? So the feta cheese you can use sparingly, it just because it's got a lot of flavor to it. So those are ingredients. That's kind of it. We can all make a salad. Does anyone have questions for me or comments?
Yeah. Been told by someone who is diabetic that he doesn't watch his carbs as much as he does the meat that he eats, and that sometimes, especially fatty meats,
Yeah.
spike your blood sugar, and he really, when he does eat meat, he's really lean.
Okay.
Is there some truth to that? Because I've always heard carbs.
It's the carbohydrates that are going to spike your blood sugar, but being diabetic, you are at an increased risk, especially if your blood sugars aren't controlled, for increased risk for heart disease. And so I would also recommend leaner meats and proteins, just because we want to watch that saturated fat in the diet, but I wouldn't think it doesn't have as much of that impact on a spike in blood sugar. But I surely do recommend leaner proteins and watching the saturated fat content, just because if you're diabetic and your blood sugars are not in good control, that just pushes your risk even higher for heart disease, stroke. So we want to watch the salt, watch the saturated fat, and just in general eat a healthful diet best we can. Anything else? Okay. Well, you guys all have bowls, and I don't know if Bella wants to talk. Maybe we'll kind of do a little few at a time, and we'll get your salads together.
Yes, I think we'll go table by table so there's not a backup in the line. So we just appreciate your patience and cooperation with that. And then you're welcome to sit, eat, visit. We also have some berries as well for dessert and a little bit of whipped cream if that's something you would like. So I think we'll start on this end. If you want to come up, and then I guess the next table of 3 ladies, if you want to meet us over here, we'll go ahead and start putting the bowls together. You can bring your bowl with you. You don't need your silverware. You can leave the lid at your station if you would like to leave that there, but we'll meet you over here.